Welcome to Waters World. I'm Jesse Waters. The waiting game's over. A memo alleging surveillance abuses by the FBI, the DOJ against the Trump campaign has finally been declassified and released to the public. The memo alleging that without the Trump dossier by Fusion GPS, paid for by Hillary, the FBI and DOJ would not have secured surveillance warrants on the Trump campaign. Christopher Steele, the foreign agent behind the dossier, paid for by Hillary, briefed several liberal media outlets, including CNN, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. He's in cahoots with them. And he continued to pass information to the Department of Justice under Obama through Bruce Orr, who was demoted, even after he was cut off from the FBI. Here with his reaction, the president's son and executive vice president at the Trump Organization, Donald Trump Jr. First thoughts on the memo.
Pretty incredible, huh?
Unbelievable.
What I want people to do is really think, what if Bush had done this to Obama? What would the reaction be? I've never seen the media more interested in not having more information
I know.
In my life.
They're supposed to want information.
We don't want, because they're all complicit in this.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I said it on Hannity the other night. What's been great about, the last year of nonsense that I've had to go through is that the only collusion that's been uncovered is that of the high-level FBI, because we do have to make the distinction between the guys at the top, the lawyers that run the FBI on the 7th floor, and the guys that do the real door kicking and the real work on the bottom.
What do you call them? The boots and the suits?
Boots and suits. It's a big difference.
So let's just talk about the conspiracy for a second here, because it's many layers.
Yeah.
What they're alleging in the memo is that this guy, paid for by Hillary, he's a foreign agent, he created all this fake dirt about your father, and then shopped it to the Washington Post, CNN, the New York Times, and then took those reports, the FBI and the DOJ did, and then gave it to the judge to help bolster the credibility of the warrant application. Exactly. And so the Washington Post and the New York Times, the whole year and a half, they must have known this thing was bogus and that they were in cahoots with him. Because
they were working with the source.
They worked with him.
And no one else could get away with this other than the Obama administration. And this is why it's clear. They weaponized the FBI and the DOJ to attack the duly elected president of the United States.
It's unbelievable. If this had happened on the other side, if, like you said, if Bush and McCain had conspired to give fake information to their attorney general and their FISA judge to spy on Obama, what if they had a bunch of lies from Kenya or from Hawaii about the president's nefarious background? And then that got into a judge's hand and they signed off on a warrant?
4 times?
4 times.
4 times. And by the way, they neglected to tell the judges where the information was actually coming from.
They didn't say it was from Hillary. They didn't say it was from Fusion GPS. So Hillary basically paid for surveillance of her political opponent with the help of Obama.
And bolstered by the Obama administration.
Bolstered by the Obama administration. To you, what does this say now about the entire investigation? Is it rotten to the core?
Listen, it always has been.
You're right.
We always said this. I mean, it is so ridiculous that let it go, though. At this point, let it go.
Give nothing to hide.
Nothing. The real problem that I've had with it is, other than millions in legal fees and lots of time wasted and being smeared throughout the media for years, that at least they uncovered this. Because what if they wouldn't have? What if they would have just let it go? At this point, I mean, there is a little bit of sweet revenge in it for me and certainly probably the family, in the sense that if they wouldn't have done this, this stuff would be going on.
You're right.
This would be going on at the highest levels of government. They'd be continuing to do it to my father, trying to undermine his actions. Imagine how effective he can be given the year he's had without this cloud over his head. So I want them to come to a conclusion already, because you've been looking for 2 years. You've come up with nothing other than their own nefarious actions and their own collusions. They've come up with nothing. So at this point, you got to come to something. Just come to something. Because if they try to drag it out for a year, they try to drag it so that, the Democrats have their talking points. I watch it right now. You see the Democratic senators, this is McCarthyism. I'm like, what? You have a guy that's been screaming, Russia, 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 with no evidence, obvious collusion, all this shade, for 18 months screaming about McCarthyism? I mean, the irony is ridiculous at this point.
One of the people that's been giving you a hard time is Schiff, one of the, I think, House Intelligence Committee minority leaders, Democrat. What would you like to say to Adam Schiff right now?
Well, listen, I think he's got some soul searching to do. He's been out there, obviously 99% of intelligent people believe he's the person leaking this. When I did my testimony to his committee, it was supposed to be behind closed doors. It was supposed to be secret. We get done at 7 o'clock at night. I go, and starting at 12 o'clock in my Twitter feed, I'm reading about verbatim what's going on in the room. So as people are taking bathroom breaks, this is being leaked from the House Intelligence Committee. Think about that. But that's what's going on in our government. These guys, and I can see the response that he's had he's scared because he's had the media in their back pockets, as we see from all of this.
Yep.
These guys are working together with the radical left, and they're getting whatever they want done. The problem is they used to have some credibility, so people still believe that, so they're able to sell that narrative. That's why you could see them ramping up so effectively to try to say, oh, this isn't really a big deal. Oh, this is made up. Oh, this is going to be a big dud. By the way, I guarantee you after we leave this, that's what we're going to be reading about from all of the major sources, because they're all complicit. They're saving their souls.
If it was such a big dud, they wouldn't have cared if it got out. But obviously they are panicking because they have something to hide. I want to show the audience what your father said when he was asked about the memo. Let's hear it.
What do you think of it?
I think it's terrible. You want to know the truth? I think it's a disgrace. What's going on in this country, I think it's a disgrace. The memo was sent to Congress. It was declassified. Congress will do whatever they're going to do. But I think it's a disgrace what's happening in our country. And when you look at that and you see that and so many other things, what's going on, a lot of people should be ashamed of themselves, and much worse than that. So I sent it over to Congress. They will do what they're going to do. Whatever they do is fine. It was declassified. And let's see what happens. But a lot of people should be ashamed. Thank you very much.
So you've had two competing narratives that have gone on for the last year. You have on the one side, in the media on the left, that Donald Trump is a colluder. He's an obstructor of justice, and he was in cahoots with the Russians in order to help win the presidency. On the other hand, you've had people reporting, a lot of this on our network, it turns out to be true now, that the Department of Justice and the FBI under President Obama rigged the investigation for Hillary and then really turned the screws to Trump. And now it looks like in a corrupt and illegal way. Yeah. And the facts are out now. And the facts belong on this side.
100%. And by the way, this has been a much more recent narrative, frankly, than the other. I mean, they've been looking at the other one for over 2 years.
You're right.
Okay, when they found, I took a meeting, 20-minute meeting. Big, but they needed it to be true.
So much like your dad. I took a meeting. But
they needed it to be true because they staked their entire credibility. Their whole narrative, that was, oh, now we can keep going. Now we can keep on the heat because they all knew what was going on.
So what does this do to the media's credibility, which wasn't high to begin with? Now, after this whole hoax exposed, what does it do?
Listen, I just think it gets rid of the notion that there's any objectivity left. And I can say that for both sides. But there's no objectivity
except Waters'
left.
World.
Obviously, well, that's, you're the exception that
fair
proves
and
the rule.
balanced.
There is none anymore. And as long as people understand that when they're watching, that it's really news entertainment. That's why you're saying, to fill a 24-hour news cycle, you have to do this. People are giving their opinions. They're no longer relaying news. They're relaying news with their preferred choice of spin. And that's a shame because you're doing a disservice to other people who actually really want to get real news.
All right, so in conclusion, you have the dossier paid for by Hillary used to wiretap the Trump campaign. You have these really salacious texts, the FBI. The fix was in for Hillary, and they hated Donald Trump. And, the whole investigation now is questionable. And you have Steele, who's actually in the memo here, this paid-for guy from the Hillary campaign, quote, was desperate that Donald Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being president. That goes to motive right there. Now, I want to talk to you about the State of the Union. We were down there together. And, the president made a lot of great points about unemployment, black unemployment. Yet, despite those things being good for America, many people on the Democratic side of the aisle did not applaud or stand. Let's see that.
After years and years of wage stagnation, we are finally seeing rising wages. African American unemployment stands at the lowest rate ever recorded. I halted government mandates that crippled America's great, beautiful auto workers, so that we can get Motor City revving its engines again. And that's what's happening.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like not rooting for America during the Olympics because you don't like the president.
I said it in tweets a while ago. They would rather see America fail than to succeed with Donald Trump at the helm. If Donald Trump came out and said he's all for oxygen, they would stop breathing.
Maybe he should do that.
I think it's a great idea.
I'm kidding. No offense, liberals.
The derangement is real. I mean, for the Congressional Black Caucus to not stand up for all-time low African-American unemployment, that's crazy. I was with Pastor Darrell Scott, who's a friend of ours. I mean, he literally said, wait a second, guys, would you rather see high numbers so you can continue to peddle the hate against Trump, continue to do this? Who wins? Like, we should all be rooting for success for our people. And I think real Americans are starting to see that, Jesse.
I think they are, too, because it's just plain as day on the screen. It almost reminds me of the DACA deal. Your father's putting out a very generous offer about a pathway to citizenship in conjunction with wall funding, 3 times more than the past president did. Very generous, yet I don't believe they want to solve the dreamer thing. I think deep down they want to force someone to start deporting people. They like the issue to campaign on because they exploit it for votes.
It's because all they have.
They do.
If they don't have that to complain about, what are they going to complain about? All-time high stock market, all-time low unemployment, all sorts of minority unemployment, bonuses being paid by companies, hundreds of billions of dollars already coming back in because of tax reform. What's their platform for 18? We want to make America worse again? I don't understand.
What are they going to do in the midterms? Because a lot of Democrats are going to be running in districts that it was close with Hillary and Trump. So, you know, they're going to have to try to play to the middle. Are they going to say we're against bonuses? Are they going to say we're against low unemployment? Are they going to say we're against rising paychecks and go along with Pelosi and Schumer? Or are they going to say, yeah, we recognize the economy's good. Here's how the Democratic Party can make it better?
You know, I think they're going to go with the former only because they can't help themselves at this point. I mean,
But they're going to lose if they do that.
That's great. I agree. But I think the problem is rather than being reasonable and coming to the table, they force themselves further and further and further left. I mean, they're left of commie right now. And that's a real problem for them because I don't think that's where America was. I think that's the lesson they learned from the election is, wait a minute, we need to be further radical left. And I don't think that's true. I think people want some moderation in their thought and from their leaders.
And the Democratic brains have come to the conclusion that this is going to be a wave election in the midterms, and they've been basically thinking it's been a lock and they don't really have to do much and just run on Trump hatred. But some new polls have come out. Now look at this. Donald Trump's approval rating skyrocketing, okay? He's now up at 42%. It's a 10-point jump since the last poll. And I think we have another poll too. I believe the tracking poll, Rasmussen, very trustworthy guy, has him at 49%. There's another poll that shows, I think, a tie in the generic congressional ballot head-to-head between Republicans and Democrats. It's not a lock that the Democrats are going to take back the House.
And by the way, don't kid yourself. Some of those polls are also understating, as they always do with Trump.
Well, they did during the last election.
Because there are people not willing to take the heat. They'll say, you know what, it's easier for them to say, no, I'm not for Trump. We had that with our own polling. We would call people, no, I'm not voting for Trump. So we started asking, who's your neighbor voting for? Oh, that guy's voting for Trump. You know, they wouldn't admit it because of the fictitious narrative put out there by the media. I saw one of the polls that said basically Trump's tied with Obama's approval rating at the same time in their presidencies. Now imagine you had the media basically being your biggest cheerleader like Obama did versus your biggest detractor. I mean, think about the difference there and what that would mean in terms of those numbers. But again, because of all of this stuff coming out, because of all of the disinformation that's been propagated, people are starting to finally see the truth. And the one thing I'll say about my father, he's got a big soapbox and he's not afraid to use it.
That's for sure.
He's willing to fight back. And that's the first time Republicans have ever done that. I had more people last week say, wait a minute, what happened? The Republicans didn't just arbitrarily cave for no reason whatsoever? Like, this is new. Republicans are actually getting used to being able to win again. And that's a big deal.
All right, well, your father's definitely taken a lot of heat.
Yes.
And Hillary had the memo on her side. She had the media on her side. She had the money on her side. She had an incumbent president on her side. And she still lost, Don Jr.
It's
amazing your dad even won.
Hard. Well, listen, I don't think it is because I saw the enthusiasm gap.
Yeah, but I mean, what a headwind.
They had it, but you know what? when you look at the way she worked, if she did 1, maybe 2 events a day, it was a miracle. He was out there speaking to real people. He can do that. He could have conversations with people, even from a stump, whereas she was lecturing people. This is what you have to do. I mean, there were times on the campaign trail where I'd be in the same market that she or Tim Kaine had been in the last couple of days, and I'm drawing 10x what the actual... I was like, are you sure they know it's Junior? Because I don't want to get sued for misrepresentation here. You know, and there was just such an enthusiasm gap. People needed someone who could actually relate, and the irony of all ironies is that it took the billionaire from New York to be able to relate to middle-class, blue-collar America. But that's what he did. And that's what's so incredible about it.
All right, Don Jr., thanks for coming into Waters World.
Thanks a lot, man. Good to see you.
All right, we'll be right back.